This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended for medical advice.
Welcome to Enhancing the Human. I'm Dr. Jenna Gatzis, a renowned expert in the field of human enhancement. I've spent decades of my life exploring all aspects of human health, which has allowed me to take people from extreme injury and disability to peak athletic performance. I use cutting-edge advancements, breakthrough technologies, and scientific insights to push the boundaries of human capabilities. The human body is able to do so much more than you think. Let's start enhancing the human. Hi, and welcome to Enhancing the Human. I'm Dr. Jenna Gatzis, and today we have Matt Roeske. He's the owner and founder of Cultivate Elevate, and he's very passionate about information and just studying our history to uncover different societal norms that we thought were correct that really aren't correct. It's pretty interesting, and things that we thought were beneficial to our health might not actually be beneficial to our health. Let's take a look at this information together and explore just what's actually going on and what the truth is. Matt Roeske, thank you so much for being here. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and just, I know how you got into this and just your health, but just hearing it from you, I'd love to hear it.
So I'm Matt Roeske. I'm owner of Cultivate Elevate. And I got into all of this, like you just said, because I had a lot of health ailments. You know, I was going to the professional and they'd always tell me it was genetic and I'm getting older. And this was when I was about 25, which was funny because I've been around for 25 years at that time. So, it didn't make any sense. And I realized that there has to be a solution. And it came with cleaning up my terrain, cleaning up my diet, cleaning up the water that I'm drinking, cleaning up the clothes that I'm wearing, not pinging microwave, Wi-Fi frequencies throughout the house, all these things which were impacting my health. But I watched a documentary called GMOs Revealed. It was 22 hours long, and it just completely blew my mind. It made me realize that our food is not what we think it used to be. It's changed a lot, and that's a lot of it has to do with pesticides and Monsanto and that whole thing. But as I started to realize I could clean up my diet, I could clean up my health, I could clean up my water, I could clean up all these things, all my health ailments went away. And I started realizing, wow, it wasn't genetic and I wasn't getting older. It was just I was poisoning my body. And I started to realize that the illnesses that we catch, as we're told that we're catching, is really just us poisoning ourselves in some different way, or our terrain has been changed, and then it results in that illness. So, when you get into it, it's so simple. And that goes into the whole germ theory, Rockefellers, that whole thing and everything else. But, just when I started getting into this, I started getting into other things. And I started to realize that there was a counter towards everything and that we don't have to live in fear because we're constantly programmed to live in fear and things are running out. And even though we live in an abundant planet, it's wild. And that goes with our health too. If we're put in that fear mindset that, germs are going to get us past 8 p.m., we're putting ourselves into a mindset which is diminishing ourselves. So we have to kind of get rid of all that. And my whole thing has been about removing all that and showing that there's a solution to everything.
Same. I heal people's injuries. Just so you know a little bit about me. So I fix people's injuries, the injuries that no one can help or they're extreme cases and there's too many things going on. I'm like, throw it at me. I love that. But I also then train you because people are like, oh, you're aging. The things I hear, the hundreds of thousands of people that I hear that are like, oh, no, the doctors say I'm aging. Really? Do they work out? Do they know anything about nutrition? Like, I'm not against anyone, but unless you're informed, please don't speak on things that you know nothing about because you plant that seed of fear and of uncertainty and people lose hope and then they don't try. And when you shut off the brain to trying, it doesn't grow anymore. And the nervous system only stays within what it knows because it doesn't think it can go anywhere else. So once I fix your injury, I can train you. I train professional athletes too and coach professional teams. So once you're no longer injured, because it's just the body and the environment being in a state of dysfunction. So you're not even to homeostasis. People aren't even too neutral. They just sit there and breathe in their neck and they're hyperventilating. They don't get oxygen to their brain. I'm like, it's this oxygen thing. It's like really good for you. They're like, why do I feel like this? I'm like, your brain's getting oxygen. Like, it's that simple, like you were saying. And I'm so blunt like this to everyone because I'm like, I have to slap you in the face with the information because your ego is like, no, this guy said this, this guy said that. I was like, I don't care about your guys. I'm like, I've done this for so long and I'm open to everything. I always explore everything, but it's all about teaching people and improving their environment because there's so many things working against us. So I teach everyone about this stuff. And love is the opposite of fear. And when we have fear, we lower our frequency. And when we have love, we strengthen our frequency. So I just like for people to understand that spectrum because it's literally that simple. It's all about frequency.
I like how you said that, and also too, medical error is the third leading cause of death in America. So someone could get a diagnosis and say, "Oh, you've got X amount of time," and then find out that the diagnosis was wrong. And then think of the mental state, like you just said, that happens to that person because they now believe that they have that illness, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I got to tell my friends and family and everything," and then they find out it was wrong. So then you start to sit there and go, oh my, this is another paradigm of just even attaching it to energy, where now it's almost like giving a person a curse. Back
Yes.
when they used to give people curses back in the day, and
Yes.
they tell you only got 30 days. And then they would go in 30 days because they cursed themselves. So, this is all, it's all related to energy. And I like that you said that. And, there are ways to heal everything. We're just always put into a box in which we can't heal because it makes a lot of money.
Exactly. And then if you're depressed from our interventions, then we have these depression medications that are ineffective. And if you actually look at the science, because I don't like when people say conspiracy theories, because anytime I bring information, I'm like, no, it's the CDC, the one that with the science that everyone always talks about. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. They're like, no, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I'm just like, I can't stand this. People won't even understand even when you slap them in the face. So I've also been learning the psychological way to present information that's non-threatening so it doesn't tap into the ego because especially in LA, people shut you down right away and then they start threatening and I'm just like, "Easy. I just want what's best for everyone. There's no like malice in what I'm doing." But I've honestly seen people time and time again, they have the surgery and they're like, "But the pain's still there." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, "But I couldn't convince you out of that surgery, so at that time you needed that because there was no convincing you." That had it, I'm like, "Now are you ready?" And then we get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
Literally by
I
creating
was going to say
safety.
that was their path at that
Yeah.
time. And
Yes.
you
And
sometimes
they
you
were
got to
crutched.
sometimes people just got to do that. I realize people's paths. You just got to sometimes you got to let them. And if they come at you, so be it. I've realized best wishes. Because I put the
Exactly.
information out there. I hope that it can help. But if you want to attack me, we're not even seeing eye to eye. And
Right.
like you just said, if you're trying to help, this is the crazy thing when you think about it. People are defending a system which is killing people.
I know.
So then you start to sit there and think, people who are trying to help, who are healing, are being attacked and ridiculed, while people who are actually harming people, like Monsanto, every single day is harming somebody with pesticides, and there's
And the
lawsuits.
environment.
We can't defend that. We really have to understand that they don't have the best intention or best intent for our health, and that's what I started to realize.
And it's all objectively laid out. It's not just emotions. If you go and look at our ponds and our lakes and our water, what the contents of those are or were 20 years ago versus now, I'm telling you, I will not if California is the worst with the amount of lead in the water and the amount of poison in the water. So I'm like, actually, lead. Tell me about your understanding of lead because now I'm like, was I conditioned to think that lead is wrong and it's not wrong and it's actually protecting us against EMF?
So this is an interesting one because there are still 25 million people with lead pipes in America. There's also 25 million people with copper pipes in America as well. Now they're telling us that the lead is dangerous. They also tell us the copper is dangerous. They actually tried to pass a law to try to ban both because they want people to have DuPont plastic pipes instead. Now, what's interesting is when I was doing a lot of research on the lead, it wasn't specifically the lead that I found out was being the toxic reason. It was the chemicals which were being placed through the public water supply, which would corrode the pipes and then make this chemical concoction, which would result in illness. So, for example, up in Flint, they were putting toxins through the water supply, which would corrode and destroy the pipes, and then people would result in illness. So, same thing with the copper. I found out that they put salt, certain types of salts through the water to corrode the copper pipes to get people away from those. Now, lead and copper both block electromagnetic frequencies. All of these towers, all the stuff that they keep trying to roll out, those frequencies will penetrate through the home when a person has plastic pipes. If a person has copper or lead, they protect that. And if you go to like the UK, this is a great one too, they all have lead pipes. They all still have lead pipes today. So what starts to happen, I've realized, is they take something, they ban it, but they don't explain the reasoning behind it. And when I was doing the research on lead pencils, when they were talking about people taking lead pencils and sticking them into them, those were actually graphite pencils.
I remember you saying that.
So then you think graphite poisoning or graphene poisoning, what we have in 2020, same thing, rather
Yes.
than the lead. And then when you go into the whole lead gasoline was being banned in about the 1970s, there's still airplanes that use lead gasoline. And then when you think about the paint, they were telling people that people were eating the paint chips. That's what was causing the toxicity. But paint itself can contain up to 13,000 chemicals that we don't even know what's in there. And they did this similar, or they did this also too with the radium. You know, the radium
Yeah.
girls,
Oh,
they
yeah.
were licking the paintbrushes, the paint brushes, the paint itself. So what happens is we get this bait and switch of a material. The material then gets eliminated, and we have no longer the ability to protect ourselves from these frequencies coming in. And a very simple example is how they talked about how if a person brings Wi-Fi into their home, they can see through the walls and determine where the people are in their house.
Mhm.
So, you know, when you think of these frequencies, they're not doing things to help us. They're doing things to kind of, you know, get in here and try to like invade into your home. And when you think about it, if you used lead paint and a thick layer of it, you could block the frequencies that are coming in. Or if you use copper on this side, you could block those as well. And it's just interesting because when I started learning that, like the Florida government was paying people to get rid of their copper pipes,
Yep.
you start to sit there and go, well, they don't ever do anything to actually try to help us.
Exactly.
So why
Ever.
would we be paying somebody to get rid of something
Yeah.
unless there's an agenda? And DuPont, if people look into DuPont, it's just a huge family lineage of banning hemp and all the other things that they've done. And when it comes to water, just like you described, they are one of the biggest perpetrators in poisoning our water with
Yes.
all of their plastics and PVCs and polymers and things like that.
And things that they could put directly into the water
Yes.
at any
Yes.
time. We were talking about the and how parasites are also linked to all of this. So it's not just one or the other. It's the environment.
Yes.
Is your environment conducive for creatures living inside of you? You don't understand how many people I talk to this about. Like I can't. I have like with celebrities that are like, do you do you talk about this shit with everyone? I'm like, I can't help it. This is all I do. I'm like, I can't have friends. Like this is all I do because you have to understand that if you're the things that could live inside of you, if you saw some of these things and then when you start talking about it, people are like, one time I pulled one out of me. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like this is insane. But it happens more often than you think. And so I've actually found places where they do colonics all the time, coffee enemas, and just talking to people about this. And there's a lot of people that have information on this and that have benefited from this and cured things or helped their body enough to get rid of these things. But parasites and heavy metals and the EMF go hand in hand. That's just the environment that they live in and can thrive in. So that's our environment, our processed food that's not really food. And then how we live our day to day, it's conducive for creatures living in us.
Well, and that's the thing is we always have like this war on worms, you know, war on this, war on us, basically,
Yeah.
when you think about it, war on humanity.
Every
But
day.
it doesn't make a lot of sense. And a lot of these things are they'll design these things. There's a lot of different pills and things that are designed to kill, they say, and whatever else. But in reality, when you start to think about it, you have to clean up your diet. If you clean up your diet and you clean up your gut lining and you clean up everything that's going on, the worms will go away because they're just there because they're trying to clean up everything that's going on inside your gut lining that you have not chosen to clean up. And they will start getting bigger and bigger, and then they're trying to eat, like you said, the heavy metals. Because when your body has so many heavy metals in it, they're trying to clean all that up so that you can survive. Our body is a beautiful, survival crystal. That's the best way to describe it. One big crystal that tries to survive and thrive. And if we poison it, then the body goes into a balanced state, which is those worms, to try to balance everything out and get everything back in balance. But, a lot of times now we've seen a lot of different three-letter agencies that came out with pills and all kinds of things to, this will fix it. And it's like, why don't we address the root cause, which is cleaning up our diet, going all organic, like you said, some coffee enemas, cleansing the system, maybe doing some fasting, or even just eating pumpkin seeds and papaya seeds. Fiber. If you don't have fiber, your stomach doesn't work. So, you sit there and go, why don't we just do that instead? It doesn't make any sense to put nanos and graphene and all kinds of weird stuff.
But it's not good for profits. Not good
No,
for profit.
doesn't make any money. None of these
Crazy.
none of these things, when you talk about this stuff, it doesn't make any money. And that's what people don't realize is this perpetual system gives you one thing to then make money off you on another because they know you got insurance and they can charge that and then they can charge it for X, Y, and Z after. And then when that doesn't work, then they have something else that they'll try to sell you and whatever else. And it's just this perpetual cycle, and I've started to realize that's what runs the economy. You
100%.
really look at this system keeps the economy floating because it's constantly making money off the people who are being sick, or under the influence. So you start to sit there and go, okay, and then we see through 2020 how things just, skyrocketed with, profits and everything else. And you sit there and go, yeah, because you're poisoning everybody. So, my biggest take is go back to 1910 when the Flexner report came out and Rockefellers and the Carnegies took over the whole entire medical system. Anything natural was removed. Anything that wasn't, surgery, radiation, pills, whatever stayed. And all natural healing, gone. So, we have to reconnect to before 1920s. I talk about it all the time. All books before 1920s, everything before 1920s. Because after that, it just became where people, like you said, are not concerned with somebody's health. They're getting a commission check. That's the best way to describe it. And it's sad because people took an oath to protect the people. But, they got bills and things like that and family and everything else. And then that's what gets involved. So, with all of that, I try to look into before 1920s and go in that line. And you'll see that everybody used chamomile, pumpkin seeds, papaya seeds, natural things. They sat out in the sun. They did things that were connected to nature because they knew that nature heals for free.
Yes. And even if you look at all the things like, because people are like, do you believe in good and evil? I'm like, you can see it. I'm like, I love it. Copper mug. So you can see it. You can see that there are things actively going against our natural healing abilities, like with the fluoride, how it calcifies the pineal gland. It's unbelievable how it's like, that can't be a coincidence. How is that happening? I saw one time at a store, they had rubber duckies on the bottle of water and it was fluoridated water for kids.
Yep.
What are we doing? Again, with the three-letter organization, go on their site, look at what it does. It's unbelievable to me that we're saying these things and doing these things because it's blatantly right in front of us. And then you start to notice and learn about the eyes, our eye health. How is my eyesight getting worse and worse? Like, we never used to live like this. Everyone's got glasses, everyone's got braces. I'm like, I look around and I have very good intuition. I'm like, go look into this. And I start looking into it, because I pay for the database of research. I want to know what we know as humans and what the science says, but also take into consideration that it's funded. But you see what the results show, and it really correlates a lot. But if you look at eye health and with the sunglasses, and then they're trying to sell me contacts with UV protection, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just bought 1,000 contacts with UV shit. I'm like, my eyes are never getting sun. And I'm like throwing them out. And I'm like, this is so ridiculous. And it's like, I try to look at it like people mean well, and not everyone's like, malicious. But when the system is just doing it, people kind of fall in line and they become conditioned to do it. I'm one of the ones that always says, I took an oath. I care about my people. Money is paper and it's just paper. So if in the healthcare profession, if you don't care about people as your number one, you'll make money. You're good at what you do. You'll make money. You don't have to scam people. But I just like seeing people just fall to the system where they just fall in line, even with what they're doing now. There's research out now from those three-letter organizations that shows what's happening. 1 million people, their periods were impacted by certain things. 1 million. This isn't a conspiracy. This is a million people. So it's like we need to wake up and realize, even altogether, people are important and human beings should be at the center of everything. Just any kind of living being. We should care.
Well, and I like what you said about the part with the babies and the fluoride, because
Yeah.
the first ever study on fluoride was done on infants without teeth to say that it was safe and effective, that they didn't
That
get
too. People need to know that. They
Grand Rapids,
manipulate.
Michigan, 1940s, they said that fluoride was safe on infants without teeth. I mean, and then all of a sudden it was just pushed because they needed to get rid of the phosphate fertilizer runoff, and they needed somewhere to put it. So they started putting it in people's mouths and they started putting it in people's water. And it's interesting because actually San Diego in Southern California, they banned fluoride multiple times because they understood everything. And they got so much, kick, like people trying to fight back and saying that we need it. And it's like they proved everything. And I think they're going through another lawsuit right now. One of the largest federal lawsuits of fluoride is actually happening right now in California. My buddy is actually covering that. But they admitted it's dangerous. The EPA admitted it's dangerous. So
The
why
science shows it's
water?
dangerous.
It doesn't make any sense. And you start to look at all these things, and like you said, even with the eyes, I was always programmed before I learned all these things about light and color spectrums and all these things that your eyes get weaker and weaker over time. So you get thicker and thicker glasses. But then you're never addressing the root cause. You just keep crutching a thicker and thicker glasses over, and then they're so thick you can't even see through them. So then you start to sit there and go, how is this going to help me? And then when you start learning about how you can use superfoods like pearl, feed the eyes, you can do eye exercises, you can do sun gazing, you can get rid of the LEDs in your home and go back to incandescents and halogens. There's so many things we could be doing. And like you said, when you look around, if 7 out of 10 have a health ailment in America, I think it's like 2 or more actually now at this point. That's insane. That's 70% of the population has 2 health ailments. You go back 1960s, 70s, when they had like all the physical fitness and everything, it was like nothing. And then you go back 1930s, literally, absolutely nothing. So, you sit there and go, something is changing, and we need to be aware of what is changing in our terrain. And like you said, too, there are so many studies on this. They just try to either hide it or say it's not true. I've been, opinion checked multiple times on whatever else. And the last one was interesting because the guy won an Emmy. I didn't even know you can win an Emmy for opinion checking on people and everything else. But this is the problem: is that people are trying to put out information and then they maybe can't find it because also the information is being censored down. And then we're just going into this perpetual state where people are getting, like you said, they're having more health ailments, and then they can't figure it out. And that was my thing. And I realized I don't want anybody to go through that. There's something we're gonna do to stop that. And if I can use my energy to do that, so be it. Because
I'm the
if
same
every
way.
one person can be better, that's a lot of healthy people. I see it
Yes.
the opposite way, and healthy people are hard to stop. They're
Yes.
resistant to everything
Yes.
that you try to push.
Yes, and if you give people it's crazy. If you give people that little bit of love and little bit of hope, and they understand that you care about them and you're guiding them towards something that's better than where they are, their entire life changes. I can change something someone's had for 40 plus years in one time. Like, I change their breathe everything's focused on their environment and how they're breathing. What are their habits in their day? Are they sitting in a chair for 7 more hours when they're not with me? Because 'Cause we're not doing much when you're working against me for 7 hours, So it's like, when you empower someone, you give them the autonomy to understand their health. It is unbelievable, and then they start conditioning other people, "Oh, you can change that. Oh, you," and then that aura, that energy becomes more on that spectrum toward the love side, toward the higher immune system side, and so people don't recognize, like, fear causes disease. Fear allows your system to break down and causes inflammation within your cells. Like, people don't really get that because it's kinda crazy, even with the clothing and the frequency. I'm like, "Oh my gosh," even the Wi-Fi. I didn't recognize that Wi-Fi can impact your blood, everything, your red blood cells, how much oxygen your body's getting. One more thing I wanted to touch on with the Rockefellers. So just so people know, when the Rockefellers, it wasn't just like they wiped everyone out because it's hard for people to picture that. They were like, if you're not in line with our stuff, you're not getting funded. So then basically Eastern medicine couldn't survive because they didn't have the funds. They couldn't survive and they basically were phased out. And so that's how they kind of washed everything away. But then, because with the Rockefellers and the oil industry, they discovered that pills could be made from petroleum. So they were like, hey, let's get into the health business. So that's how that all started. It was a few years later, 20 years later, they were like, hey, we're getting all this cancer out of nowhere. Definitely not correlated to the, petroleum. So then the Rockefellers also founded the American Cancer Society, because why not?
Yep. And also, too, they were the ones who started the vitamins. Rockefeller
Perfect.
educational system started the vitamins and the whole vitamin push, and that's where actually nutritional yeast came from. I always wondered, I was like, where did this come from? This doesn't make a lot of sense. Like you have this yeast that's inactive and you like add more minerals to it. It never made any sense. I'm like, this doesn't seem to logically, food doesn't exist like that. And it was
Right.
interesting because people used to eat just sourdough yeast and that would give them all the B vitamins and minerals. But when the vitamin system came out, and that kind of just came, flourishing into the 1930s and 40s, then they came out with the synthetic yeast, which was refortified. And then that came into making refortified foods as well. So you see how the
Fortified.
system is not addressing the root cause, giving you something which then results in all these other things. And the whole system, I've realized, is anti-nature. It goes against the ways that nature naturally work. Like when they make vitamin C, they put it through like 7,000 different things. They put benzyl alcohol and all kinds of weird stuff to make it. And then you sit there and think, well, how is my body going to absorb that? But if I go outside right now and I gather some flowers and I make my own tea, I'm going to get the vitamin C and all the beautiful nutrients from the flowers and the enzymes that are going to help heal and just naturally absorb into my body. But like you said, they weeded people out. They increased the costs of the certifications so that they could get rid of the people. And then as those people were weeded out, any person who went against the narrative became considered a quack or pseudoscience or, witchery or sorcery because they were going against the narrative. And then you fast forward all the way to 1960s with the conspiracy theory, which is what we're both being addressed as right now with this talk, is that anybody who went against the narrative of which we were being shown on television. This is taking it to the next level on Operation Mockingbird was considered a conspiracy theorist. And then if you started debating, how President Nixon called the moon with his landline, same exact thing. All these things that don't make sense, but they used it in a different
So
way
crazy.
because first they used books and the newspaper and the radio, and then they started using television. And then they put people on television and be like, this person's correct, whatever. And it's like, and this reinforces the narrative. And that's why, like you said, the media or Operation Mockingbird, just always repeats. It's just parroting, the same thing, trust the science. And it just
Yes,
keeps
but they're not
parroting.
going by science, and it's all just a way to condition your brain. People don't recognize that your subconscious brain is always listening. So, I always try to point this out to my family and to my employees. So, the Kings hosted us yesterday at the hockey game. So, we went and visited their facility, and then we went to the hockey game. And, like, we're looking around and all these sponsors, and it's just like the whole arena is just like, and it's like flashing, and like I just like look at my employee and I'm like, look at this, and I'm like conditioning, 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 because then you're not fearful towards it. If
Yep.
your brain subconsciously is introduced to something, even if it doesn't even notice it's there, when it sees it later in life, it's like, oh, that's not fearful because I remember that somewhere. So it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside to see it again. So it's really crazy because the system has figured out a way to profit off of our beautiful bodies and our natural healing abilities. And so it's crazy that they're conditioning people to be a certain way. And when people get mad and fight me on facts that, is objective data that's not from me or my emotions, I'm just like, can I ask you something? I'm like, because I'm hundreds of thousands of hours researched into this. So I don't, I hope you are too, because I'm like, but why are you so angry? That's what I always say. I'm like, "Why are you angry?" And they're like they step back and they're like, "I don't know." I'm like, "Maybe it's the conditioning. I don't know. Maybe look into that because it sounds like a you problem."
Well,
But
that's an emotion of color,
yes.
the red color spectrum. That comes with anger and whatever. And yeah, exactly. I sometimes I sit there and think like, why? Why, if someone presents you with something else, why do you instantaneously attack somebody? It doesn't make any sense
You
unless you were conditioned or went through maybe trauma or whatever it is, or maybe your food. I think the food has a lot to do with it. I think the frequencies have a lot to do with it. They
100%.
have shown where Wi-Fi and these frequencies can make you very irritable and angry because it's speeding up your central nervous system and making everything fire real fast. So you're going to get real agitated. They put this stuff in cars and all kinds of things. It makes no sense at all. But, you sit there and go, well, that could be why. And then based on, like you said, maybe some subconscious programming of things that they have seen, because like think of all, the violence and things that they just broadcast, the movies, all these things, you're putting people into a state. They're not showing cute little things and anything else. They're putting people into a an anger state, and then that's when they come out. And what I've learned is, like I said, I hope that, this information can help you. And I've learned to just say that because I realize that it's going to take them time too for their path to understand your side. It took me a long time to realize that they were, messing with our weather. When I was in
Crazy.
Chicago, I was like, something doesn't make sense. There's weird storms happening, and all of a sudden it's cloudy every day. It doesn't make a lot of sense, So
And they're
it
weird
takes.
clouds. They're not normal clouds. It's not
No,
normal. I
no,
sent you that picture of right before the rain in California. I'm like, look at this. It was all. I'm like, well, looking for something. Something's coming, and then it poured. A house down the street slid off the hill.
wow.
The
Yeah, and that's the
piano
thing
was in
is,
the road.
they can do a lot with, you go back into Vietnam. That's when a lot of that started, and then World War I and World War II. But
Mhm.
it's been going on for a long time.
A long
And
time.
they try to normalize it. They put it all over, the media that these are like new clouds that you've never learned about in third grade and whatever. So they can try to condition. But yeah, the Weather Modification Act of 1976 and 1979 is one that anybody can look into. And a perfect example is what's going on right now in California, Arizona, and the whole West Coast. With the flooding and the hurricane that came last year too, all of these things that, when do you know if those things happen? And what will happen is it would become a reoccurring occurrence now, and then they will try to normalize it, similar to the hurricanes that would go to Florida and somehow end up in New York. You sit there and go, wait, what? When did this happen? So it's with this topic, people can look into it, but it was funny because a scientist actually admitted today, I actually just reposted on my Instagram, that scientists are determining that, dimming the sun or blocking out the sun is not the best idea.
And
And
they're
that
doing
was
it with heavy metals. They're putting heavy metals in the air to block out the sun. So, like, when everyone these same people are preaching the green and the green and the green, what's green about that? Because all of that is now falling into our soil, into our earth, and you were talking about the quality of the food earlier and the soil. There's no more nutrients because all of the things that are running off from the garbage that we're putting in the air and in the water, like, we're poisoning every single living thing in our environment and then packaging it as green. Literally, without even knowing how much CO2. I saw an interview in court of someone asking the people making these regulations on, how much CO2 is in the air now compared to 20 years ago. And they were all like guessing. And he's like, yeah, what is this? Price is right? Like, and it's zero point zero 0.04 compared to 20 years ago is 0.03. So I'm like, we're making all of these changes and all of these laws and all of this infrastructure change. And I'm all for bettering the world, but people are people, and I know the human being, and we need to keep ourselves in check. Sometimes we go a little crazy and we got to reel it back in. So I feel like if we just let these boards do whatever they want to do, I mean, it's not conducive to us having a healthy environment because people take a little too much time at the top end of the spectrum. And so if we don't keep people accountable for what they're doing, it can go really bad for all of us.
well, and I like that you said that because how can you sell solar panels? How can you sell solar panels if you make it cloudy? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And that's the thing we have to ask these questions of, if we modify the weather in one place, what happens somewhere else? This is why the Weather Modification Act of 1976 actually took place back in the 70s, because people were messing with the weather so much that it was snowing in Miami. And people started freaking out, going, what's going on to our oranges? And then, like we said, what happens when something happens over here and you impact the agriculture? If we're, like you said, trying to be green and sustainable, well, without food, how do we survive? And if we impact our agriculture and we have, things happening all over the place, how will we eat? And we can grow our own food. But then if you're modifying things and messing with things, it's interesting because Monsanto has a patent for an aluminum resistant seed. And you sit there and wonder, well, aluminum reflects the sun. Why would they have a patent for a aluminum resistant seed? And
It
then you
doesn't
look
grow
at
too
Walmart
much.
and they have a patent for robotic bees. And I'm big on electroculture and trying to assist our bees. And I got tons of bees all over the place. But I'm big on that because I realized we can use the Earth's energy and everything around us rather than messing with our sky. It doesn't make any sense to mess with the beautiful sun, which has been shown to heal almost every ailment. This goes back into the 1700s. But, it doesn't make any sense. And when you get into all of this, like you just said, You look at the numbers and you start to ask questions, and all of a sudden there's holes in all the data, and things that go on. Oh, I thought by now we were supposed to have like the ice caps were supposed to be melted and we were supposed to be underwater. I remember all that, but I'm still here right now. And so we have to ask questions about these topics because it's just, yeah, they try to blind us with information and, like you said, subconscious throw it in your face, 8,000 times over again because they're trying to program us. But we have to step back and go, does that seem correct? That all of a sudden X, Y, Z is happening or someone is preaching X, Y, and Z.
And all this information, like when we say it's a conspiracy theory, if you go look up this information, like I'm big on the governmental sites, I go and look up the patents. When I find a patent on a electromagnetic gun that can shoot you and give you a heart attack with a frequency, I'm like, wow, this is insane. Or patented tornadoes. I'm like, wow, interesting. And this is the governmental site. Like these are tornado patents. If we're not modifying the weather, how do you have a patent on a tornado? And hurricane. It's pretty interesting. So
Well,
it's just
and not to cut you off, but on that
no, go
topic,
ahead.
a lot of patents have been stopped due to a security threat, national security threat. So when the oil executives took over the patent office in about the 1960s, if
Hmm,
anybody
I
created a
didn't know
car
that.
that didn't run on oil, that patent wouldn't be approved. But now what's interesting is that you have
Mhm.
just explained, and I've shown on Patia or whatever that website is, there's thousands of weather modification patents. Wouldn't those be national security threats? That you're allowing this technology to be public so that people can just, change the weather? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But the car that runs off water, like the 1970s water car, that is considered a national security threat.
And
You
it's
know,
interesting,
go ahead.
in different countries, it's different because I travel with some of my celebrity patients and, they'll travel with, the special services over in different countries just for protection. And I like to ask different questions because if you look, we were in Paris and I'm like, there's a lot of those things on buildings that are, the ball with the antenna. And I'm just like, and I ask them, I'm like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's for the energy for the building. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they just said that. Like, I can't believe they just said that. And so it's so interesting because this information is out there. And, just like Gaddafi was doing it, that you can gather. When I started putting copper, every one of my patients has copper and everything they have. I kill everything because I can't keep it alive. You put a little piece of copper in a plant, the plant the next day is like, it's unbelievable the difference in one day, let alone this one thing was crispy brown. I like hit it and it fell apart. Like it was dead and it came back to life and is like the biggest flower I've ever seen in my life. I can't even believe it. So what is that? I don't know, but let's explore it because it's not doing harm. Like that's what makes me mad. People are like, "Oh, I don't know about that compression or the cryo or this or that." The side effect of your pill is death. There's like two ways to die with that one. And you're getting mad at me because you can get cold in the ice tub. I It's always risk versus reward. Let's try to help people without threatening anyone and by just giving information. I want people to make informed decisions. If you don't want to do good things or if you don't want to do something natural and healthy, fine, but at least you understand. Even with things like birth control, people get really crazy about abortion and birth control and all that. Do what you want, but to realize that's like I learned in school when you have an abortion, it can give you cancer. So, stand for whatever you wanna stand for, but I want people to have this information, like, don't just go out having abortions night and day, like, what do you know? And why are you so strong towards this side yet don't even know the side effects? And it just, like, it makes people, question a little bit, like, "Hmm,
It's because you're popping the bubble. The bubble has a certain way of thinking, and then that's popping the bubble, and then they might feel that that is threatening.
mhm,
And it's like just look at it from another side. And like you just said with the electroculture, I'm writing my book. It should be done. It's actually done now, but it's going to be published and everything else. But I got so many
congrats."
pictures and things to show of all these things, and this all connects to everything that you just said. When you go to Paris and you see that Eiffel Tower, there's actually 30 Eiffel Towers across our realm. So when you think about that building was everywhere and still is. You could go to Michigan, there's an Eiffel Tower in Michigan, but those tapped into the atmospheric energy. And when you start using this copper with your plants, that's what you're tapping into. You're tapping into the ether, which was removed off of the periodic table in 1908. Even though the Russian scientist Dmitri showed all the stuff related to the ether and quantum and all those things and everything else, they didn't publish his information.
Yeah, I
And then
didn't know that. I
so
love
when you
these
talk
little
about this
facts.
topic, it becomes considered woo woo and pseudoscience because it doesn't exist. But it's you sit there and think the perfect example. You walk into a room and all your hair stands up because you picked up on the energy of the room. So if that doesn't exist, then how does the plants and all of the energy be picked up together at the same time? And it was interesting because Valerie Hunt wrote a book, Infinite Mind, absolutely one of the best books, but it talks about how your aura actually picks up on everything before it happens to you. So before your brain and your spinal cord pick up on everything, your aura is sensing it. Similar to like if you're about to step on a nail, you all of a sudden you already instinctively know not to step on it because your aura is picking up on these things. But this all exists and it all has. You go into the ether, that term before 1920s, and I could even show some books, but every book, that's all they talked about. The ether, the ether, the ether, the ether. And then after 1920s, when general education and general education was with Frederick T. Gates and the Rockefellers, when they created that board, they started eliminating all that because that would make people know that there's a fifth element. There's a beautiful energy that's all around us we can tap into. And when we look at if we went outside, all these power lines that are outside, those are tapping in. Atmospheric energy happens over 15 feet. So you start to see if we place these little copper antennas, we start tapping in like Nikola Tesla was doing with the ground, and we start harnessing that energy, we can uplift our terrain. And the coolest thing is watching, and I've done it. I got birds and bees and everything you can think of around me, but they all start coming because they know that the energy is very healing. And the funniest part is watching cats. Cats will just sit next to the antennas. They won't move.
Yes.
They'll just sit on the antenna the entire time because they can pick up on that energy too. But we've learned to use iron and pesticides, because that's Monsanto. And iron gunks everything up in the soil, makes it hard to work with. But copper, on the other hand, makes everything grow like crazy. And Victor Schauberger, was one of the truest ones who brought all this to light. But in about the 1940s, because of a radio broadcast and newspaper that went out, they said that if you use copper in your soil, you'll yield too much food and not make enough money. So farmers at that time completely went against it. So my whole thing has been trying to revive that, bring this knowledge back. And in my book, that's what I'm putting in there. But so that people have options, because every person should have abundant, healthy, nutritional food at their fingertips. They shouldn't have to go into the store and play, what is this Franken food? And has it been stuck with some weird things and whatever else? They should have it at their fingertips. And that's what I think we all should have.
100%. And I feel like we're on similar journeys. I just want this information that can help people. And I've changed people's lives with all of this information. It's time and time again. And just so people have an understanding of what your aura is, it's your electromagnetic field. How we were saying, we're all energetic beings, and you can tap into your aura. So that same spectrum of love, high immune system, and evil, and low immune system and disease. So if you tap into a better environment, healthier energies in your system, you can create a stronger electromagnetic field. I honestly envision myself protecting, I have a bubble of force around me where I'm like, you're not coming in here. Like some of these celebrities, I'm like, nope, psycho, you're staying away. But you can grow that. And so I've actually taken a picture of mine. Have you done your aura?
I've done it, yeah, in Sedona. It showed
You
a lot of
have it?
different
I
colors, purple. I had a lot of purple and a lot of white. My crown was all purple and white, and then I was also hiking at the time, so it was a lot of red, orange, yellows, very hot, very warm at that time. But yeah, it was also right after hiking, so to be fair, it was
so
probably
do you have
heated
a
up.
picture of yours by chance on your phone?
No, I have. I think I have the printout somewhere. I think I have it in one of my books. Yeah,
I'm like, I have my
nice, nice.
right. So this is mine. Isn't that crazy?
That is nuts. And
And
if you look,
so
my computer's on black and white mode right now, so I can just see the whole outline.
it's with the amount of color. So I have a friend that did it. My friend had it at their wedding. And I'm like, what is this? And the machine kept breaking. I'm like, I'm not doing it. And the lady's like, I think you should do it. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And then she's like, I think you should do it. And then she was like, you have white everywhere. She's like, you have guardian angels all around you. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't take things. I recognize it. And I'm like, okay. So then 2 weeks later, I'm in Toronto with the family. We were shooting a movie. And I'm sitting outside talking to my mom on the phone, and this guy comes up to me, this Indian guy, and he goes, "You have a strong forehead." And I was like, "What is this guy doing? I have a strong forehead." I was like, "What does this mean?" And he goes, "You have angels all around you." And I'm like, Two people in 2 weeks told me that I have angels all around me. So it's just interesting because, like, if you probably have animals, babies, they can sense the energy. People are like, my kid doesn't like anyone. I had a rescue dog that attacks everyone. That licked my face day two, and they're like, the whole family was like, I don't understand because that love is felt. So if you have true motivation of love and caring for people, people can feel that. So, and you can help people grow their electromagnetic field just by extending love to them. Because some people are consumed, and that little extension of love from you can change the outlook of their entire life. So, just I feel like that's how we all help each other get better is just by spreading love more and more. I speak all the time about sports performance, and I'm like, the number one thing to help you in sports performance is love. Like, and it is because you're not going to get anywhere if you have all this energy that's negative around you. Every other systematic thing in your body is impacted by that and less efficient.
Yep. It consumes you and it will eat you apart. And
Yes.
it's funny that you said that about the energy thing because I have dogs that just sit down, they just sit down next to me all the
Yeah.
time. And they can pick up on that. And that's the thing is animals, Valerie Hunt showed this. She actually had a meter and she showed the connection between a human and a dog and the aura and how the aura exchanges with
Yeah.
one another when the dog goes to
I
jump into
saw
the
that.
into the human's hands and they
Yeah.
hug and all that other stuff. So, it's all there. And
It
this stuff has,
expanded them.
uh,
It expanded their aura when it was together.
yes, because and that's the thing is like when you look at why they try to divide us, 2020 was like, oh, you got to step on a sticker at Trader Joe's and put up a plastic thing and whatever nonsense, all this nonsense. But you know, you
Science.
you look at that and you start to see, okay, 6 feet is where your aura reaches out to as well. That distance is about the distance in which your aura kind of starts, and then it can go up to 30 feet. But if you stop everybody at 6 feet, their auras cannot merge together. And you start to see that, oh, somebody understands that. Somebody starts to understand energy and
Oh,
how
they
things
know.
work with moon cycles and how things work with all these different things. But, it's wild when you get into this. And once again, this stuff has been considered woo woo, but when you get into Kirlian photography, where they would take the aura photos of the person's hand,
Yeah.
they could determine their
This.
illness based on the aura and the meridian lines of the hand. So, we are very connected to energy. And the best example is when people heal people with their hands. You have people who they work at hand healing. They put their hands over somebody and they heal them. So if energy was not what we think it is, then how does that work?
I have people that
Something's
cry on the table. I have people that cry on the table, and they're like, "What is this?" Like in the beginning, they're like, "I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do that," and they're like, "Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do." Like I don't know why everyone says this, but they're like, "If you told me you needed to punch me in the face, I would let you." And I'm like, "Why does everyone say
clever,
that?"
yeah.
But it's like having that environment of feeling safe and loved. They don't understand it because our environment is so consume and external and, validate through external and try, it's not love. It's not internal light. And so we can create, and light is so much stronger than darkness. And if we just give a little bit of light every single day here and there to everybody, just a little, you see someone's having a bad day, just hello, how you doing? How are you? And like give them some sort of isolated attention to show they're important. You can change literally the world because the world has a frequency and people don't recognize that, the Schumann resonance. And so there's objective data on how you can cure disease just by praying for people. Literally objective data on that. So that's where science meets woo woo because how are you going to explain that? I can't explain that.
And also on that too is, if a person is sitting behind in a lab coat or in a research facility, how are they connected to nature? They're dissecting nature and pulling it apart, trying to figure it out. And Victor Schauberger once said, how come no scientist goes out into nature to actually learn? He's like, I'm out here in the forest learning from the trees and things like that. Why aren't the scientists out here? You can learn everything from them. He learned levitation and how to create flying saucers and everything. But you get there and go, it shows you in nature how to do it. If you're behind something and cutting it open and trying to analyze it, it's like you're disconnected.
But even so, it was funny because you look into this stuff and, Elon Musk posted something about because I look into a lot of Tesla's inventions and the Rife machine. And again, I work in a lot of places where some people that I work with have Rife machines, and I'm like, "This is so cool." So it's like each organ has a different frequency, and you can tap into different frequencies, and it's just again, it's not that one tool fixes everything, but you're just trying to create a solid environment for the body to thrive in. And it's just by creating that loving, that good energy. And it's, yeah, ooh, all day.
When I was researching Wright, it was talking about how he would use color spectrum. That was actually the secret I found out. It was a color spectrum. So let's say a person had an illness with a red color, he would shine a red color onto them, but it would be as a frequency, so like 4,000 hertz or whatever, and
Right.
then that would heal the ailment. And this goes back into Edwin Babbitt with his light as color and healing with light and all of the different stained glass windows, all the
Yes.
frequencies that come off those. So when you sit there and think about it, yes, we could be using all this beautiful technology. It all exists and we could be using every different part, and it's all connecting us back to the frequencies of nature.
Yes.
Everything is mimicking nature and trying to bring back nature. And what I've learned is the more we connect back to nature, the more everything just feels like that. The more I'm trying to dissect, and I got 10,000 names that I don't even know if it's real or not or whatever, the more complicated things become. And then you get into confusion and you can't even figure out what the root cause is because you got 10,000 things you're trying to figure out. But I started to realize that, yes, all of these things are very simple, but Reif was another one. He was a great one. Wilhelm Reich was another one. George Lakhovsky, all these people doing these healing modalities with just natural things and copper and quartz. That's usually
Mhm.
what it always is. But, you start to go, we need to connect back to that. We
Yes.
really need to connect back to that because there's no side effects. It just comes with healing. That's best.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's funny when people get so angry. I'm like, but who cares? And I'm the type of person where I won't say do it unless I do it first. But I have a lot of patients where they're like, oh, well, this doctor says that. And I look at the doctor and he's, 200 pounds overweight. And I'm like, he took a course on nutrition for a week, 20 years ago. And I'm like, he doesn't practice what he preaches. Knows nothing about, I was injured when I was younger, started healing myself, ran a marathon, did this, did that. I'm like, let's see what else I could do. I love challenging the human body, ego, everything, just to see what our capabilities are. And so if you're not going to do that, how are you speaking to that? If you say that's impossible, or everyone always says you're aging, I'm like, no, yeah, the human body does age, but with the brain and nervous system, we don't have to let it age. Yes, over time, if you don't stimulate these neurons, they will start to reduce as far as the accuracy of the neural input, but it doesn't have to because you can continue to stimulate it just like the nerves and the muscles in the eyes. So, just giving people tools where these are healthy, natural things that can help your daily life and knowing because I bought one of those meters and I'm like, scanning everything and all the frequencies. This is my life. And like, so these things from some of them from Amazon, they emit when they're off.
Yep.
They're frying our brains when they're off. So if especially the cordless phones, it's like having a Wi-Fi tower in your room. I have a lot of patients that are like, I have headaches every day. I'm like, you surround your entire, and they're like, I go to sleep with my AirPods. I'm like, and I have tinnitus. So you sleep for 7 hours with your AirPods and you have tinnitus. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna it's crazy because I'm like that frequency is causing your tinnitus, or at least if you had it first, it's now enhancing your tinnitus. But then they feel like they lose hope because they can't get out of it, and it's sad. But there's little things you can do to really help your life, your health, other people, and we're all connected by that. And if the pineal gland is where our electromagnetic field comes from, why is fluoride in the water trying to calcify it? Because one of the side effects from the three-letter word websites is shows how fluoride water calcifies the pineal gland. So why are we doing that? What's the point of that? It's kind of crazy. But it's all just to take us away from that internal light.
Yeah, and that's in the book The Invisible Rainbow. If anybody hasn't read that one, I highly recommend if you own any device in your home to just read that book. I mean, that book changed my whole life. It made me realize where diabetes type 1 comes from.
Mhm.
Electricity and EMF. They'll always tell you, oh, it's genetic, but they won't talk about the electricity and the radio frequencies which are being pinged in the places in which the birth is taking place, and then they're being put into an area with a lot of radio frequencies. But you get into all this and you go, this all makes sense, and like you said, it's been so, just like pushed down and told that it's sorcery and whatever else, so that you just don't connect to it. Because once you start connecting to all these things, and like you said, getting rid of AirPods and everything else, you start realizing, wow, I was actually messing with my health. And now I don't need any of that stuff. And I don't need all these other things that I used to use. Life is so simple, but we've, like I said, either overcomplicated things or given it 1,000 different terms when it all just relates to the same root cause. We're not connecting enough to nature, and we're not taking care of our health and our terrain. Once we do that, everything just goes like that. So, it's a great book, and I highly recommend everybody check that book out.
I hate our world has become a world of cowardice, and it's so easy to just stay where you're comfortable and not do what's right. And I think we need to go back to being accountable and having integrity and character again. And a lot of religion, because I try to look at religion objectively because there's so much bias against it. You're like automatically just discredited once you start talking about the Bible or anything like that. So I'm like, all right, I love that kind of stuff because I'm like, why? Why is there so much controversy there? So then you start looking at, like you said, before 1930s and how they took out some of the verses in the Bible. Why are we taking out verses? And then when it says you get to God through prayer and fasting, why would you take that out? I don't understand. So then I'm like, what's there? So then you research more into that. And so prayer, thought, everything's frequency. They used to stand in the church bells to heal. And then so we banned church bells. Then would they started just collecting the church bells?
Yeah. So after about 1940s, this was a orchestrated event through the most of the world. Especially in 1940s and World War II, all the church bells all disappeared, and they started getting rid of a lot of that. They collected them all up, broke them all, and then when you think of like the churches themselves, a lot of the pipe organs are all gone, and those were all made from lead. So then
I
you
didn't
start to
know
sit there and
that.
think, okay, somebody understood that they should use lead, but we should ban it. But yeah, like a lot of this stuff, sound frequencies are just so healing. And the
Yes.
most fascinating study I ever learned was a guy who was going around with like a microphone, and he was going in all the churches and cathedrals, and he was seeing that the water of the body would look exactly like the stained glass windows in the cathedral. And he would measure this, so everything is a frequency and a resonance. Now, let's take it a step further. You have pipe organs and church bells, and those things begin to ring. Imagine what it would do for your whole body. You could heal instantaneously, or you could heal the whole town, because number one, the cathedral or church could provide energy to the town. This is one of the things that can happen. And the other part is it can heal the whole town at the same time. So you start to sit there and go, okay, well, this is why a lot of things were removed. This is why things now face east to west. People get sick when they sit in the pews. They just sit because the energy is flowing east to west instead of north to south. This is why certain things have been removed, like the pipe organs or maybe the bell. This is why they put cell phone towers on top of those places. People all gather there. You start to see, okay, this was a healing place and also an energetic place. And if this could provide enough energy to light up all your lamps, like Nikola Tesla used to do, then you can start to sit there and think, well, then this is probably why it's changed over time.
And how we need to get back to that. And
Yes.
too, if you look at just I was teaching one of my employees about sound and just putting salt on a speaker or sand on a speaker and showing the shape that it makes, and it's just like the church windows. So, even if you're against religion, because I have people that get angry if I say anything about religion. Wow, that's a sign right there, buddy. But like anyways, like just even if you don't believe in things, how can you deny that? That's so to me, you're not being objective. You're being emotional because you're blocking out things. We're having a debate. We're just trying to show information and talk. There should be no negativity in this. There should be no emotion. It's just laying out the data and learning and growing. And that's what we should do as humans because we really don't know that much. So it's pretty crazy the world we live in, literally.
Well, and I like how you said that, because we shouldn't judge, right? If
Oh,
you don't know, you shouldn't be judging. And then
right.
number two, yes, it is. If we don't know something, we should learn about it. We should really
Yes.
kind of understand it and see it from a different angle. And that's why every video I try to put up, I try to show it from a different side. I was just talking
Yes.
about like uranium glass today, which is baseline glass, or, the term Vaseline, which is interesting. So they took something that was originally called baseline, which was uranium glass, which gathers energy and makes energy. And then they made a petroleum product called Vaseline. And then whenever you look up that terminology, you get Vaseline. You don't see the baseline glass. So, we've had this bait and switch. And it's interesting because that glass, well, like when we go back to the stained glass windows, they use that type of glass. They also use cobalt, which is very highly energetic as well. So you start to see somebody understood alchemy, somebody understood how to create things, somebody understood color spectrums, sacred geometry, somebody could just craft. That's the most, I think, mind blowing thing is like you'll see a cathedral or a temple or whatever it may be, and it's just perfectly crafted. Not one error. And then you sit there and think, were they using sound? Did they use light? What were they using to make these buildings? Because now like you said, we build things with DuPont plastic and boxes and whatever else. So you see that there was a resonance, there was a frequency to these buildings that can be very healing. And we need to tap back into that. And that's
Mm.
why I'm big on people collecting things and collecting things from the past because they were built heavy duty. Now
Yes.
it's all cheap DuPont plastic and everything.
Yes. And it's built to fail, basically. So it's pretty crazy. Some of my patients too, they go through, they go and they pray with people. So it's either in person or they'll do it as a group through Zoom. And so the more people, just like Dr. Joe Dispenza, where he talks about the more people thinking positive thoughts, they actually track the brain waves changing at the same exact time. So just, whenever you feel fear or you have phobia, there's fear there, and that's again lowering you down on that spectrum. So whenever there's fear, just check yourself. Again, as human beings, we need to check ourselves and just wonder, why is there fear there? Maybe I don't understand something, so let's learn about it. And just keeping the information going to where it's all coming from love, because no one has the answers. And another thing going about Tesla, about Elon, that I was going to say, he put up a picture on Twitter with his desk, and he had one of those things where it's a frequency enhancer. I forget what they're called, but it's something that you hold, like you were saying about the crowns, and or I read that you talked about with the crowns, and just you can enhance your aura with different things, like you have the copper on you, and the Tesla had one of those on his desk, and Elon, and I'm like, interesting. If he has one of those, does he understand it? Of course, he understands it. So he's doing things to make profit, but what else do we have there? Like, what other information can we gather from there?
Well, and like you just said too, just the name Tesla gets rid of Nikola Tesla. That's
Hmm.
how things get eliminated. People don't realize that a new person becomes the hero. Elon becomes the hero, even though he wants to put chips into people's minds, and it gets really weird. So
And those aren't his inventions.
yeah, yeah, and it eliminates your ability to look up all of this stuff. Nikola Tesla was creating things and using the Earth's energy. The beautiful pulsating Earth's energy. There's unlimited amounts of that, and that's why he wasn't funded. J.P. Rockefellers and I'm sorry, J.P. Morgan Chase and the Rockefellers, they didn't fund that. They didn't give him any funding. When his project was about to be completed, they pulled the money, and they knew because it was going to give people the access to unlimited energy, and they wouldn't need a meter. So with him too as well, electric vehicles existed in the 1800s. I've shown all the videos of them
I've
run
seen it.
around. They were getting 1,000 miles to the charge, and they were huge, heavy duty cars. You saw the big wheels and everything else. Now we get like 250. And they got kill switches and all kinds of Wi-Fi pinging them and whatever else.
Hmm.
So you see how like things they were already here, and like
Yes.
you said, a person like that already knows all of that. They know all of the legacy of those people who created everything like that. They then just kind of like sever it a little bit and then sell you back something with like 5% of the efficiency that this used to sell. And I realize that it's how things go, and people need to be aware that anytime somebody is put on a pedestal to save you or to heal, whatever it may be, and put out there, you got to do some research, and
Yes.
kind of see, why are they being pushed in front of you. Is it just the pendulum swinging back and forth, to kind of show you, first it wasn't, we won't show you, now we'll show you everything, and then this person is a savior. But when I got into going around with a tri-field meter in the Teslas and all around the
Oh
places,
my
they're
gosh.
actually off the charts.
Crazy.
And somebody was even saying the back is the worst for a person who's sitting in the back seat like a child, because the battery is back there. So they're sitting next to the battery. So you sit there and go, why are we using any of this? It
Right.
doesn't make any sense. And that name was just to eliminate you from looking back, similar to the baseline and Vaseline.
And just so people know, because this is, I didn't know all this stuff. And when I first started researching it and people started telling me things like, yeah, you sound like a psychopath when you start talking about it. And then you start looking it up and I'm like, no, I'm not a psychopath. Like, look at this information. So it's out there. But people have to realize that the people working against us are also learning the loopholes on how to screw the system the other way for more profit. So, they're looking for every loophole they can, and they're looking to take over companies that have the biggest voice and the biggest way to condition you subconsciously. So the people giving you this information or putting people on these pedestals are all connected. And so when you're looking up on their search engine what information you're trying to find, the information they want you to see comes up at the top. So always look at different sources and know that it's been corporatized and it's been structured in a way that pushes agendas to make profits and to do things in evil ways. And I feel like the propaganda is so hard and it just shows how powerful love really is. Cause I'm like, people ask me all the time, like, do you believe in good and evil? And I'm like, yes, because evil is pushing so hard. And love has to be that strong for them to be pushing that hard. So it's interesting. We just need to tap into ourselves a little more.
Yeah, they're working against the clock, trying
Yeah.
to go against the grain. I mean, that's
Yep.
pretty much what it is. I mean, because why would you like even like I said, blocking out the sun? This gives us life. It gives everything life. So things that don't make any sense. But yes, there is it's a spiritual battle. That's going on every single day, and it just depends on your path. I've realized like which path you would like to take. All the information is here too. Of me and you just talked about. It's all there too,
Yeah.
and that's why they were saying it was funny that like the AI thing was going to be the biggest threat because it was uncensored. That's why.
Mm.
So people could pull up something. Now they've censored all of them. I looked up a whole bunch of stuff that is all censored and
Crazy.
everything else.
Yeah. It's
They
all
already got
skewed.
rid of everything that I used to like try to type in there, just like Wilhelm Reich and whatever. They're like,
Yes.
don't mess with the weather and don't look into these. It says like, please consult a scientist or something funny. And
Yep.
it's like, but they're doing it. But now you won't allow somebody to give access to the information. So, all of these things become a threat because it's going against their narrative. But I realize that what me and you are speaking, which is the truth, is resonating at such a frequency that they're almost kind of like in a pickle because even with the electric vehicles too, a lot of the companies have gone bankrupt and are discontinuing them all because nobody's buying them. But they don't want to say that because that will, kind of stop people from realizing, oh, wait, I don't need to buy this car. So they're not going to talk about it. But I've seen and gotten emails where people, they're getting rid of all the electric vehicles. So it's going, well, that's not talked about. So then, where are we going from there? But the truth resonates at such a level that they will try to say the internet is bad next, because me and you are talking about too much truth. That's pretty
Right.
much what it comes down to.
Right. And it's just, think about people's motives, and then people that attack people like us, it's like you're helping the agenda. You having that ego and having that animosity towards someone that you know nothing about, you're literally promoting negativity and hurting people. So, before speaking on things, just keep yourself in check and understand, learn a little bit more about things firsthand. Don't just believe what people say because I have people that come in and they just repeat the news. And I'm just like, wow, it's so funny that the same people come in and it's the same thing. And I'm like, oh, I just watched the news today. Like, I know what you were conditioned today. So I don't really watch the news. I don't care about celebrity. I don't care, I care about people having good character and doing well in the world because I feel we're here for a different purpose. And I feel like there's things that we're supposed to find out about. And I feel like I've always had this intuition and I've always run with it. And the things I've uncovered, it's pretty interesting. And I've helped hundreds of thousands of people change their lives. So why not, like you said, there's no side effects. So why not explore that a little bit more? And with the sun too, the way in California that the sun is vilified. These freaking housewives are like, tell my kid not to wear sun. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like, because they slap it on their face day in and day out, just petroleum. And it's like, I go look at the science again, the science. I love when and it says how that cream with that type of ingredient that's not supposed to be on our skin, which is the largest organ in the body, is causing cancer, literally causing melanoma. So the science shows that that's what's causing melanoma, but you're still coming at me about not going in the sun. I have people that wear turtlenecks day in and day out because they will not go in the sun. And I'm like, the sun, I'm not even kidding you. And like it's 95-degree weather. And because there's so much fear around the sun, I'm going to age, I'm not going to look good. Because if you look at the research, it shows that. And then our skin is made to where we have receptors in the skin that sense the UVs and it actually allows us to release things to protect us from the sun. But when we put that garbage on our skin, it blocks those receptors and now we don't have the protection from the UVA, UVB rays. So we're causing more problems. And so it's mind blowing to me. And then also too with we were saying about the light and I'm researching a lot about the eyes and just the receptors in the eye. from 6 o'clock on, our receptors, like you think about when we were cave people, we didn't have lights in our houses. We lived in rocks. So, not me personally, but if you think about that, the research shows that it's after 6 p.m. The eyes sense that the sun's not out anymore, and it starts to release melatonin. So melatonin is an antioxidant. It's one of the best things for you, and it allows your brain to wind down and then be able to have quality sleep. So we're sitting here because light is light. Your brain's like, oh, it's daytime, even if there's a light on, because it senses that with the same receptor. So if you have lights on, until midnight, you're looking at your phone. So you're not going to produce the melatonin, that you're not going to have high quality sleep. That's that environment that's conducive for parasites and garbage. And so you see, like, everything is kind of working against us. Just a little education can really help you. And they know that. They know
And just,
that.
switching to incandescents and halogens or even candles, before going to bed, is just very healing. I mean, that's the best way. Like I got in my house, you just have candles or incandescents or halogens, and you will just sleep like a baby because it's the same spectrum. An incandescent is the same spectrum as a candle. So, you sit there and go, okay, well, I look at a candle, it's very relaxing. Fire is
Yes.
real relaxing. But all of these synthetic wavelengths, that are just all pulsing different weird colors and digital light, like you said, are going to keep you up and disrupt your melatonin. And then when you can't sleep, you can't repair. And then you go through this perpetual state. And then depending on the eye color too, certain eye colors, lighter eye colors have less melanin in the eyes. So then they're more, the eyes, it's even more bright, like it's even more intense. So then you start to sit there and think, the brighter things are, then the harder your eyes have to work. And I've had a lot of people where they've actually reached out and said, like, they didn't want to switch from LEDs to incandescents because the LEDs are now so bright that they can't see anything without the LED. And that's scary because then you
Totally.
start to sit there and think the mind and the eyes are being reprogrammed so
Yes.
that, that they can't function with the natural lights. And then they're dependent on this system. And that's what,
Mhm.
as this whole talk, we've had this talk about, it's all about making people dependent rather than actually uplifting and allowing them to have freedom.
Yes, because we're powerful beings if we just wake up and realize it. And your body can heal itself more than anything anyone's ever told you. Before I even went to grad school, I had a guy, because I was always been interested in this. I had a guy that was completely paralyzed for 10 years. He was in a car accident and completely paralyzed, drop foot on both sides. And I'm like, well, we can't fuck it up more. and so he's like, wow, you're the first person to treat me like a human being. I'm like, you are a human being. And I was like, don't trip and fall and embarrass me, because he had, and he just, like, that love that he felt, it completely changed his outlook on what we could do together. And so he had complete drop foot on both sides. So he had a brace to hold up his feet, and he had hip flexion. So he could, like, balance on the wall, but he would fall. And I'm like, visualize, because visualization, I worked a lot with the Navy SEAL in their training and how they use this stuff in their training. They use the pods, they use the float tanks, because they use the things that impact the human body and the human physiology. And so this guy, I was like, visualization, just look at your toes and visualize the nerves firing to the toes. Start visualize that they're moving. And he texted me after 6 months and he's like, my toes just moved for the first time in 11 years. And so I was like,
See,
let's keep going. And
just
no more
amazing.
drop
It doesn't
foot.
have to be electrocuted and zapped and all kinds of things. It just has to use his
No.
mind,
Yes. And we
a
use
powerful
vibration.
somehow.
We use the vibration platform. And I did some soft tissue work and some healing stuff with my hands through there. And he doesn't have to wear braces anymore. He has complete function in both of his legs, and he wears regular gym shoes.
That's how it
I'm
should.
like, sometimes I'm like, that's freaking insane. But that's why I'm like, that shows the extent of, like, how far we could go. I studied this day in and day out my whole life. And I'm like, it's like I picked my grad school based on the cadaver lab. They had a 24-hour cadaver lab. And I'm like, let's go. So it's like learning is just my passion. And I'm like, if I'm uncovering things like this, why do we cut things out? Why are we so scared to look into things? Especially things that have no side effects and that can help people.
Well, and like you just said, that is just, removing things doesn't make any sense. Like it was
Right.
put in your body, before you were born. And then as you were born, it was supposed to be there. And then when you've just taken things out, they always told me, like, oh, you got to take out your tonsils. And I said and thought there, I go, that doesn't make any sense. Like I've had these and they're helping me. And what I realized was fragrance, any scented product would make my tonsils swell. And then any type of poison, pasteurized foods I'd put into my body would make my tonsils swell. And as soon as I eliminated fragrance and pasteurized foods, all of a sudden my tonsils never swelled anymore. And it's like, instead of removing them, why don't I just fix my terrain? You
Right.
know, it doesn't make any sense because when you take something out, now you're missing it.
Yes.
How your body is going through a meridian pathways. And if there's a pathway missing, then the body is now it's more challenging for the body to function. So
Yes.
why not just address the root cause, like we were talking about, rather than just taking things out and playing, that operation game that we played as a kid and whatever else,
Yes.
just popping things out. So it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, we should be leaving things in place and understanding that we can use our mind to heal, and we can clean up our diet, clean up the water, and the body begins to heal like that.
And in wisdom teeth too, the wisdom teeth are connected to the pineal gland. It's interesting. Incidents? I don't know. So if you when you think about it though, just follow the money. And that's where a lot of answers they will appear. Oh yeah, I asked the same questions to everyone. So I just want to go over this question for you. There's two questions. It's basically the number one behavior change that you think will lead to the biggest change in someone's life.
Oh, spending time in nature. I mean, I think is number one. I mean, if anything, because you just sit out there and it just heals your mind, your cells, everything. I spend so much time in nature just watching hummingbirds and chipmunks and whatever, and it's just magical. Like they're always just doing their thing, and you just have that connection. And I think
Mm.
just we need more time in nature. This is audio is great and video, and these things are all great for us to connect. Technology is beautiful because we can connect from all different parts of the world and be able to teach and learn and everything. But we also need as much time in nature as possible because
Yes.
this is great, but we also need that time because that's when our cells heal. Doing barefoot
Yes.
grounding, I think, is honestly number one. Just connecting, touching the earth, being in it, I think is one of the biggest healing things we can possibly do.
And so people know leather shoes and wood shoes, you can the electricity goes through the ground, and so it can go through the shoe. But with rubber soles, it's blocked. So now we're more disconnected. So now I got UV contacts blocking in my eyes, and I got rubber soles on my shoe, just making me crap. So just understanding that information and clothes, how clothes have different frequencies. And the polyesters are plastic and garbage, and they lower your frequency or your aura that I showed earlier. So now you're now lower on that spectrum. Your immune system is less. And the connection with people too, we're social beings. It's so important because I remember I saw a video of Fauci too. I love Fauci. Like I just impressive, this man. Impressive. Mass murderer. Anyways, but I've seen picture or videos of him from a long time ago when he was, continuing to expand other pandemics. And he talked about how it's so bad to isolate people from one another because
Oh,
we need nature. And so it's funny. I'm like, how do you I thought science, I thought you were the science. So it's interesting to, just look at things that are happening in our world and correlate things because we all have that inner intuition and you can strengthen that and so just trying to not gaslight yourself and trusting your gut feeling is so important. So, and the research shows that tree hugging, one of the best things you can do, physiologically changes your body.
yep. It takes all the static off the body.
Yes.
That's the thing. We have so much static. Those rubber DuPont shoes, like you just said, static buildup. Plastic combs in the hair, static buildup. Polyester clothes, static buildup. And then not connecting to nature, static buildup. You start to understand it's all static, which clots the blood. People got really thick blood because they're not touching nature enough. The blood is all dense and hard and everything else. But yeah, it's been shown, and then it was turned into a hippie movement. That's what people would say. It's just a bunch of hippies, but it's like actually connecting to nature and connecting to the trees and touching is a beautiful energy exchange for yourself to heal and to give energy to trees because nature needs love too. If we sit and do all the things we're doing and we're not connected to the trees, they're not going to do well either. And that I think is why a lot of also trees are not doing as well. That like because kids used to climb all over the trees and they'd be in there connected and touching and everything else. And now they're not doing that. So we really are supposed to be in nature as much as possible rather than, inside a box for, 24 hours a day.
100%. So important. I appreciate it. And then the last question is if you can go back and tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, I guess I went against the grain in a lot of things, so I wouldn't say that. But yeah, I would probably. I mean, if I could put my wisdom teeth back, I would do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, they were taken out when I was a kid. I didn't
Mhm.
know. I went to the professional.
Yep.
I trusted the professional at that time. My teeth were all jacked up from drinking pasteurized milk. They pulled out 15 teeth. We're doing all kinds of stuff. I was like their little, I guess experiment. And
Mhm.
I guess if I went back in time, yeah, I would not do any of those things because It doesn't make any sense, And when I started realizing about the wisdom teeth, how it's connected to the heart and the meridian line and everything that's connected, and your jaw, like my jaw muscles became weak over time because don't have teeth to actually chew, So if I could go back, I would put all that back and put them back in my mouth. But yeah, I guess that would be one of them. And also just not to listen to any of the stuff that I was told, because I always had the feeling that I was being lied to all the time. And that I feel would just enforce that even more because even I remember sitting in school, I would fall asleep and just be bored and whatever else. And I realized that when I've gone through this path for the last, I would say 3 to 4 years since 2020, it all connects the dots to why I was naturally doing it.
Yes.
Because this talk that we're having has so much more energy and life to it than all the stuff I was teaching about, Christopher Columbus nonsense and 1492 and whatever else, all those things that have no substance because it's all lies, no
And fill in the
substance.
bubble. There's no understanding of the information. I used to sit back in school and be like, "Look at this. This is what we do." I'm like, "Everyone's going to the bars every week," and I'm just like, my parents didn't come from a lot. I'm 100% Greece, so they came from Greece, and like they wanted to give me the life they never had, and I'm like, "My parents are paying for this? Like, this is unbelievable." And I make whatever I go through, I make it the best I can make it. So I'm just absorbing this information, but I'm like, "This is all a con." And then I remember the day the Gardasil vaccine came out, and I was like, "Wow." Like there were signs everywhere in school, and it's like every sign, but get this, you must get this, you must. And I just remember like why, and like we're taught in science, not that's illegal. You're not supposed to push it. This isn't like I'm not allowed to push things because I would, that's a conflict of interest. I give people information and they can make the choice. You don't push things, especially when there's no side effects given. So it's interesting to see just the lies, and like for people that have such high standards, they're really not following their own standards, and no one's keeping them accountable. So it's really sad.
Yeah, that's when the whole HPV thing, which is a bunch of nonsense as well, but was being
Unbelievable.
pushed, and that whole thing. And then they were telling everybody, and then all the side effects that happened where they were saying, which was crazy. This was like a year later, that if a person over the age of 26 gets it, that they would just perish, that they would just, so then you sit there and think, wait, what? So how many of these are you putting into people? You've never said anything,
Right.
and now all of a sudden you try to push people into believing something that doesn't even exist in the first place. But, it's crazy. And it's just, once again, the money, money
Hmm.
and following money and putting poisons into people, I mean,
That are
that's pretty much what
patented.
it comes down to,
It's crazy though when you look at all the diseases that are patented. I'm like, oh, disease is patented. Interesting. It's crazy, but I appreciate you so much, and it's so refreshing to find people that are, and there's a lot of resistance against both of us, and I feel like whatever. I'll not go out with a bang, but I will do what's right, and I stand behind everything that I say because I truly care about people, and that's all it is. There's no other motive. And if people want to attack, it's like it's really sad because you're preventing people from learning from information that can help them without any side effects. So, and you're polluting your body with more fear and hate, which is going to lower your immune system. So, and then one thing I wanted to say just for you in California when 2020, when all that stuff was going on, California tried to legalize you could sleep with someone knowing you have HIV, and it was no longer illegal. So, and I'm like, "What?" So during, one of the craziest pandemics where we're scared of this virus, we're gonna legalize the most deadly virus that we have, and you can sleep with people and it's no longer illegal. You don't have to tell them. So it's and look it up. So why are we doing these things? Why, if the regulations and the regulatory bodies have our best interests at heart, what is that?
and they were
So
also trying to let pedophiles and all kinds of people out of jail because it was too dangerous for them. Which, when you think
yes,
about that, that's a whole nother story of what on earth. And that's the thing is, all of the lies and everything never made any sense. You
right,
could eat inside a tent, outside in a tent.
yes,
You can't eat in the restaurant.
right.
Like just
And if you have to go to the
silly
bathroom, just put your
things.
mask on. You're good.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, and
good to
you can
go.
sit down and then take it off and then put it off and then throw it
Fine.
on the ground and pick it up. Just
Yeah.
stuff it, or like or the best was like, the germs only come out past 6 p.m.
Oh, that's the
They
best.
don't come out. They don't come out like while you're having dinner. They only come out when you decide to go out.
Or
So
like, if you look at history with the masks, they had a pandemic where people had a pandemic from masks, so they were breathing in their own bacteria and getting bacterial pneumonia. So, but we won't talk about that.
no, there's a great book, The Contagion Myth by Dr. Tom Cowan, that goes heavily into that for people if they want to research that one. It's a great one.
And then name your book again and when it comes out.
It's going to be called, well, now, I've been trying to debate the name now. It's been going kind of back and forth, but it's going to be called Electroculture and the Ether. I think that's what I'm going to have it. It's just nice and simple, but it's going to go into everything we talked about in energy. And I'm showing all the patents and everything, things related to dolmens, things related to weather vanes, lightning rods, everything of kind of, when you look at these things, you kind of understand the energy, but that's going to be in there. And then all of the gardening success stories, which are just wild to show the
Crazy.
photos.
So much fun.
I think it's definitely going to bring a lot of information out there and give people another side. Because I
Yes.
think like this whole talk me and you had today is just giving people another side to just see something different
Mhm.
and to just, take it from a different side and see, another way rather than the ways we've been told.
Right, and try it. It's easy. Just, and that's the thing is like we're not pushing anything on anyone. We're just giving information and it's so important to just try for yourself and you'll see it's results speak for themselves. I work with the best of the best all over the world. People fly in to see me and I'm like, my little brother laughs all the time. He's like, this little girl's over here like changing the world. And I'm like, it's all through love. Like it's literally all through love. So if you just bring a little more love into your world, into the world of others, you can make such a difference in the world and we can be so much stronger together because everything they're doing is trying to separate us and have hate towards one another and fear. And I'm always like, because people are like, "What do you think about this?" Because they want to hear, and I'm like, "Well, I think it's like, look at the baby, look at the baby." I'm like, "Well, they're dangling something over here, screwing us over from behind." So it's important to just recognize that and really again look for the love because the true people you can feel it, and when you don't feel right, you should question that and just open your eyes.
Sure. I mean, and yeah, look at it from every side. If they tell you something's over here, like you said, look at the other side. And then be like, does that make sense? And then
Right?
just sit out in nature and think about it. Because when you're in
Exactly.
nature, you're at peace. So you
Yes.
sit there and think, I don't think that makes any sense. So
Yes.
I think that's why we need a lot of time in nature. That's
Mhm. And physiologically, scientifically, your body and your cells are healthier. So you're not trying to reduce the inflammation you're going through. So your brain has a chance to get out of the sympathetic phase and rest and digest and actually contemplate what you want to do and what you're thinking and bring in different memories because your body, when you're so overloaded, it can only do so many things. So nature is where it's at, 100%. Well, Matt, I appreciate you so much. You have no idea. Keep doing what you're doing. We support you. We'll support your book in any way. Love to stay in contact. I feel like I like have this train of good people that I'm just like collecting where I'm like, we're all good. Like, because it's hard. You find things where that evil and that negative energy tries to take from good energy because that's what it feeds on. So it's important for people, like-minded people, to stay together and help one another and protect one another.
no, and you're right. And that's why,
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time on Telegram, trying to grow the Telegram community as much as I can with Cultivate Elevate because I just want people who support one another.
Let's explore that more. It's always room for debate and open communication. There's never animosity toward anything. Whenever there's animosity, there's propaganda, and you're trying to be guided one way. So you look at the
Yes,
baby.
there's a lot of that. There's
Well, thank you so much for this. I appreciate you, and I've gathered so many good people, so I'm willing to share all my good people with you. And again, we just need to protect each other and help because we're growing the love in the world, and the human resonance is changing. And I feel like love is going to win always.
Well, thank you for having me on, and it was a blast. And I'm sure we can talk more for a long period of time.
Right? I'm gonna share my garden with you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Matt Roeske. It was such an amazing episode. I love this information, and I love just exploring data together. As humans, we don't really know that much, and we need to constantly keep taking a look at the information so that we can decide what's best and keep moving forward and keep progressing together. But the key word is together because everything is connected and everything is through love. And the more we realize that, the more we'll understand how powerful we really are. It's all internal and it's all through love. So thank you again for joining us. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, review, follow, share it with your friends. The more we can get this information out there, the more people we can help. So thank you again for joining us. This is Dr. Jenna Gatsis on Enhancing the Human. Take care.